Hello YouTube and welcome to GrunfWorks. This is episode 44 of the Interplanetary Voyage of Exploration. And today we will be mainly doing some transfers. Let's all start off from the actual viewing the mini Moho probe. So, as you can see, we get some warnings from the tech life support that our orbital station or orbital lab supplies are running out, and this is something that we'll need to address, but we'll probably do it in a future episode. Right now our first and primary concern is actually getting this Moho probe, which was originally DRES probe, to get an encounter with Moho. If you remember in that previous episode, my original plan was to launch this one to DRES. However, since it was using near future propulsion, which was being powered not by nuclear generators but by solar panels, we figured out that we would need to burn on the dark side of Kerbin, which would be problematic because, well, we have no solar power. So with that respect, I have decided to repurpose the probe and use these kind of probes mainly for Moho and Eve, so that we can actually burn on the sunny side. Okay, so that being said, we are now preparing for that transfer burn, and I'm just trying to make a short burn to see how long it would take, and it's 16 minutes. So that basically means that we will be needing to do this in a couple of orbits, because it's a long burn and we have to see how much we can burn for. Okay, so by the way, if I'm like sometimes cough or do like I'm very sorry, because I'm having some I'm a little bit cold, so I have a little bit throat issues. However, I'll try to keep that to a minimum. Okay, so let us put the node prograde and let us press the burn. So right now I'm trying to figure out how, given my power generation as indicated by Fusebox, which seems to have been working correctly, how much we can burn. And now it's reporting that we are generating no power, but we are spending around 54. And I'm trying to figure out why is that happening, but first I have to think fast. I have to discharge my capacitors, which are kind of my backup in case something like this happens. So, and there you can see the reason why we actually don't have any power, because of course we're having an eclipse, such a rare celestial event, especially when we have to do our Moho transfer probe. Yay! Well, yes, I guess this burn will be a little bit shorter than expected, and we won't be able to shed as much delta V as we were hoping. So I guess we will just have to do a next orbit and repeat the process. If you remember, it was similar to what we were doing to our Eve probe. Note that this one has a bit higher thrust to weight, because the last Eve probe, if I remember correctly, has 0.08. This is 0.29, which is almost 0.3. So it's like, let's say, 3 to 4 times higher thrust to weight, but then again it's a heavier probe, so yeah, it still might take some time. And looking at the probe, I was trying to now recharge the capacitors in the rare event that we again get some issue. We have another maneuver node, and once again 34% thrust, maneuver prograde. And now looking at this, how is this being set up, I'm not really liking the fact that we have only 54 power generation, because after all, I did design it to be capable of much higher thrust, because this way we are still utilizing very, very little of our thrust to weight. We are thrusting 0.10, so not really much better than our Eve probe. So in that respect, I'm thinking, okay, I'll complete this and maybe the next burn, and then I'll see if I can rotate the whole ship like 90 degrees sideways And instead of only the 2 solar panels catching the sun, I might get 4 solar panels catching the sun, and hopefully I would be able to thrust at a higher throttle. Like maybe instead of 30% I could be thrusting at 70%, so that's kind of my ambition anyway. But this is post-commentary. At the time when I was doing the burn, I wasn't really paying attention, so yeah, it costed me a little bit of delta V and very low amount of it being shed. Now that I can think of it, these near future propulsions, they require very long burns, and I'm not 100% on board with that. Now here you can see me experimenting and looking what is my power generation, and now it's like 130, so it's much better. So yes, I think I will try to rotate 90 degrees and then burn at higher degrees of thrust. I was just here playing with a flight computer and trying to figure out what would be the correct setting. So in the end I decided just to basically put the SAS on, kill the flight computer, and I'll just use flight computer for burning at a decent thrust. So each orbit I have to fix my maneuver node so that I can continue thrusting, and here sometimes you just get some wonky results which are kind of confusing. So time for next orbit. And yes, I always get a warning from the fuse box when our electric charge is about to run out. It's a handy feature and the only reason when my fuse box wasn't working why I didn't uninstall it in the first place. As you can see, now we can thrust at 80%, which is, maybe we could have maybe 82, but it's much higher thrust, and obviously our burns will take a bit less. So yeah, that's kind of good. So we might not need as many orbits as we were hoping. So we're increasing our apoapsis ever so slowly, and yes, this camera shift can mean only one thing, that we will be going interplanetary. So that pretty much means I will just need to continue burning and until I execute the maneuver node. So yes, thrusting ever so painfully slow. And this is a nice screenshot. Why not? Yeah, it's for our Moho transfer. So let's see, we're just now making sure that we reduce our periapsis. And yeah, Moho is actually hard planet to nail. It has a very small sphere of influence and it moves at the elliptical orbit. So yeah, transfer for that one is kind of tricky, to say the least. And at the time when I was recording this, I actually didn't know fully how to fully utilize the benefits of transfer window planner, like the ejection angle, inclination, and total and prograde delta V. I didn't connect the dots that I could actually use it in the precise node, but then again I started realizing that when on our next interplanetary transfer, which I think also we will be showing in this episode. So this is a little bit slower episode today, but given the previous episodes that are a bit faster, yeah. So yeah, and also as you can see on our Kerbal construction time, we have our exploration probe that is being slowly built, but that happens only after 2 transfers, and we have also the DRES probe transfer window for the chemical probe, which will be happening sometime later. Okay, and now I'm kind of fiddling with the maneuver nodes because I didn't realize that my maneuver node was actually set to be very, very, very late, and I was thinking, yeah, I needed to connect it here, but then again I realized that my node is in 224 days, which means on the next orbit around the Sun. So, yeah. So I'm just now adding the alarm clock alarms just to say when we will be crossing the sphere of influences, and we are now out of the sphere of influence of Kerbin, and we are kind of, I'm thinking the cheaper is to actually do it at the sending node, but then I realized, wait a second, this maneuver node is in one orbit, so I should actually do it sooner. And yes, then I started to play a little bit with our maneuver node and hopefully figure out when exactly should we be encountering Moho. Because now we have no longer sphere of influence change, so we're actually quite close. A little bit fiddling around back and forth. And come on, come on. And here we go. We have a Moho encounter. And given the fact that this will be taking in like 1 hour, I will probably do that burn using the Kerbal, using the flight computer from the remote tech, obviously. So I'm just telling it to execute the planned maneuver and to do it at 77% thrust. What I didn't know at the time when that execute plan maneuver is only done at 100% thrust, which means our batteries are once again being discharged. So, word of warning, if you say execute maneuver node, it goes full thrust. If you want to do it at a specific throttle, then you have to press burn. But then again, we have some capacitors that we can once again utilize. And I found them to be actually quite useful, because you might get into some unpredicted situations and then you really want to actually do that kind of stuff. Okay. That being said, let us just be finished with our burn, and when we have consumed pretty much all of the capacitors, then I'll just stop the execution of the maneuver and I'll burn at the thrust that I feel comfortable with, which I think is around 75%, I think. So now we have switched the mode, kill rotation, and enable the SAS, and instead we will say hold maneuver prograde, and we will do the burn manually, because we can much better regulate the throttle ourselves. So around 70-ish % of thrust seems pretty viable, and we'll do that until we get an encounter. By the way, as you can see, this is all shown in like 3 times acceleration, because those burns are, man, they take forever. And yeah, I'm playing them at like maybe 15 FPS for this kind of probe. So I mean, it's still fairly decent and playable, but still, it's much better that you guys enjoy it in like as it you should. So okay, we do have our Moho encounter, which pretty much leaves us to have this probe just recharge its capacitors, and then we will let it be on its merry way. We still have plenty of delta V 3.7, and at this time my only concern is if this probe will have enough delta V to actually make it to Moho orbit rather than just a quick flyby. But that's something that we'll have to worry about when we actually get there. Okay. Screenshot. And back to the Space Center. Okay, so first, as you maybe guys have seen in our Kerbal alarm clock, the next thing to happen was the transfer window for Sarnus. And we have seen it how it looks through the telescope, the Hubble telescope, which unfortunately we have blown the processor. That's a note to myself. I actually have to create a mission to fix it. But at this point, I'm actually thinking of taking one thing that is actually even more important than the Sarnus transfer, and that is the supplies to our orbital lab. We don't want our Kerbals running out of snacks, because then they will be in very bad mood, and Kerbals in bad mood cannot really do any research now, can they? Or in this case, with the tech life support, they would just die. Beautiful, isn't it? So this is more of a rescue mission, and given the fact that I want to add and send quite a hefty amount of supplies, we are not using our SSTO, because the bigger tank, the one that we sent, has proven to be pretty much unstable yet, and it would need some higher thrust. So we will a little bit revisit our SSTO program once we get better engines. But for this time being, we're actually just sending a small tug probe that should actually get to the station and connect and just stick there until its supplies ran out, hopefully. So this is more like an emergency mission. So I'm trying to keep the part count as low as possible, and due to that I'm making obviously some compromises, but then again you have to think that since we're using Kerbal construction time, if we don't keep this part count low, it will take a lot until this craft is built, and if it takes long, our Kerbals might die in the process while waiting for the rescue that will never come. So trying to keep it as simple as possible, but with as much supplies as possible at the same time. Okay, and so this is our tug, and time to put it in a fairing. 3.75 regular. Yeah, it's a little bit chubby, but then again, we don't need to care. And this time we will not be returning anything else back to Kerbin, so yeah, due to the trying to keep it low part count. And we have 4,000 delta V in the bottom stage, and as I'm adding a little bit more stability stuff and control stuff, I'm getting worried about our delta V, that if we'll have enough for the rendezvous. We clearly have more than enough for the orbit, but when it comes to rendezvous, it's a little bit iffy. So I decided to add a little bit oomph to it. Thrust weight is good enough. Let me just quickly strut this thing. We don't want it to wobble. We cannot really afford many mistakes here. And just check the staging and build a vessel, because simply said, guys, we don't have the time, and now I'm using prioritization, as this one needs to be built before everything else. And so we have 7 days until it's built, and maybe a day before it's rolled out, and we had like 12 days before we actually ran out of supplies. So I think we will get there in time, assuming nothing goes wrong with this probe. Yeah. Okay, and now I'm just trying to see. We're coming back on our Sarnus probe, the one that we launched in one of the previous episodes, and the main idea here, as I said, we have designed the Sarnus probe. Actually, we're using the Joule probe, to be honest, because the communication range is enough, the power generation is enough, and there's really no reason why not to use this probe. Delta V, it's a little bit on the conservative side, but then again I think to Sarnus, especially if we're doing the one-way trip, it should be more than enough. We'll have to see if we will be doing a fuller return, because I'm not that overly optimistic when it comes to there and back again. A Kerbal tail by probe something. So now I'm just trying to see how would our encounter look like. And actually, when I'm burning here, for the first time I'm paying attention. Dang it. Come on, give me a break, will ya? By the way, guys, if any of you is playing with Dang It and know how to actually reduce a little bit this failure rate, please do let me know. I don't know if there's a case we would need to invest in some more maintenance costs or something, or more science into it, but yeah, please do let me know. By the way, this is the first time that I'm actually looking at my information from the transfer window planner, because until now I haven't been fully utilizing these guys. Okay, but I guess the motor has failed, so our antenna can no longer undeploy and deploy, which is something that we have to think that we won't be able to aero brake around Sarnus, but that wasn't the idea anyway. So yeah, I guess we will just have to point to the node and burn, and I'm not getting rid of the bottom stage here because I need every ounce of delta V that I have. So we have 2660, and we do have a Sarnus encounter, which is just wonderful. Let's think of this probe as a Voyager. It's just going far, far away and hopefully returning some sweet, sweet science. At least, yeah. At least from Sarnus, and I'm kind of hoping it will have a nice beefy bonus multiplier, because I really need some healthy influx of science to be able to move our interplanetary program with a more like serious note. So that's why I'm kind of launching these missions in the first place, and that's why I want to initially to recover probes rather than transmit the data that is incurring loss when transmitting. And we are staging, and as you can see we have a nuclear stage at the bottom, but then again you have seen me launching this one, so I'm just running at times acceleration, of course, and making sure that we hit our transfer on the nose. The good thing about this, we don't have to worry about our electric charge, and we don't have to worry about anything else. We can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the long burn while it's being executed by the flight computer. I find it to be really cool, because then you don't basically need to worry about anything. Our thrust to weight is 1.40, which is fantastic given our previous experiences, so yeah, I am pretty positive about this one. And as we are burning, I'm getting ready to just move from hold maneuver prograde to kill the rotation, just to make sure that we hit it on the nose. And yes, here we go, we do have a Sarnus encounter. So let's just see if we can fiddle with it to make it closer. Let's see. Then again, maybe not. Perfect. We will be creating somewhere along the en route another waypoint and just giving it a look if we can make it any better. Somewhere closer, perhaps, maybe on the ascending node. Come on. Game, please don't mess up with me. So yes, usually ascending nodes are the best place if you want to do fine tweaking maneuver nodes, and then because then you can put the correct inclination and everything. So now you can see me fiddling and trying to figure out what would be the best way on how to tackle this, because I want to be coming as close to Sarnus as possible. Okay, come on, come on. A little bit more fiddling than I would like, but then again. Let's see if we put it here. Oh, and it seems that we have a winner. Okay, we might do a burn here, so let's just... And here we have, yes, a very nice Sarnus encounter. I really want to see those beautiful rings. So, yeah, by the way, for you guys that don't know, Sarnus is a part of the Outer Planets mod, which is fantastic. If you should really check it out. Okay, so now I'm doing holding maneuver prograde and then kill rotation, and I will probably disengage the flight computer simply because if I leave it on, by the way, screeny time, if I leave it on, I'm risking on getting a not a number bug, because it's a 090, and I have identified this to maybe be when I transition to a ship that should have a flight computer still on. Once again, guys, thank you very much for watching. This is GrunfWorks signing off.